सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये चैतन्यं सर्वगं सर्वं सर्वभूतगुहाशयं यत्सर्वविषयातीतं तस्मै सर्वविदे नमः। शास्त्रानर्थकमेव स्यात् न बुद्धेर्भ्रान्तिरिष्यते। बन्धो मोक्षश्च तन्नाशः सयोक्तो न चान्यथा। बोधात्मज्योतिषा दीप्ता बोधमात्मनि मन्यते। बुद्धिर्नान्योऽस्ति बोद्धेति सेयं भ्रान्तिर्हि धीगता। बोधस्यात्मस्वरूपत्वात् नित्यं तत्रोपचर्यते। अविवेकोऽप्यनाद्योऽयम् संसारो नान्य इष्यते। मोक्षस्तन्नाश एव स्यात् नान्यथानुपपत्तितः। येषां वस्त्वन्तरापत्तिः मोक्षो नाशस्तु तैर्मतः। There is no real bondage, there is no real liberation. So Purvapakshi says, if the Vedantin says that there is no Atma is never bound, never free, then the question of Atma becoming free does not arise. Then question of the moksha for the Atma does not arise. Shastra anarthakyameva syat. Then all the Shastra that is devoted to teaching the nature of moksha and the means of moksha for Atma, they become redundant because there is no application. No, that's not so. Buddhi, bhranti, ishyate, bandha. There is no real bondage in Atma, but there is a notion of bondage, all right. No real bondage, but the bandha buddhe bhranti. That I am bound, that notion does exist in the buddhi. Mokshasya tannasha. Therefore, the nasha, the dispelling, the removal of that notion that I am bound, by another notion I am liberated. That is called moksha, sayasokto nachanyata. No other way is the bondage or moksha explained. So how does that notion arise? How does that Brahma arise? Buddhi bhranti ishyate bandha. So bondage is bhranti of the buddhi. How does that bhranti arise? Bodhatma jyotisha buddhi. The buddhi that is illumined, enlivened by the Atma Jyotisha, Bodhatma Jyotisha. But the light of the consciousness, that is nature of Atma, the buddhi in the very presence becomes enlivened. That is the nature of buddhi. That enlivening explained by Chidabhasa, as though the consciousness gets reflected in buddhi, as though. So buddhi becomes enlivened and buddhi itself thinks I am Atma. Bodham Atmani manyate. The buddhi thinks that consciousness is my nature. Na anyahasti bodha iti. There is no real bodha, the witness other than me. I am the bodha, I am the knower, I am the doer, experiencer, I am the Atma. Sayam bhranti dhigata. There is a reason for this bhranti. Buddhi, of course, is insentient by nature. And if it was experienced as insentient, then this notion that I am the Atma would not have arisen. But buddhi experienced itself as a sentient conscious entity. And the self is consciousness, therefore buddhi takes itself to the self. So I am the Buddha, I am the knower, I am the Atma iti. Sayam bhranti dhigata. This bhranti, the notion, the delusion is in the buddhi. So this is how Vedanta explains. And nothing else makes, if this doesn't make sense to you, nothing else can make the sense anyway. If anything, this makes the most sense, let us say. To explain what is happening to us, or explain what the reality is, that bondage is a notion, not a reality. This is the way that Vedanta explains how the notion rises in buddhi. There is no other explanation also better than this. Because it's not real. Bondage is not real, that is where the mithya begins. Yadasad bhasamanam, the bondage not there in the Atma appears there. So this mithyatvam is the trump card that Vedantin has. That bondage is mithya, therefore moksha also is mithya. There is no real bondage and real liberation in Atma, but still the notion of bondage persists, is there. And as long as that notion persists, you are as good as bound. As long as the notion of snake persists, the snake is essentially there for the one who entertains that notion. Bodhasya atmasvarupatvat nityam tatropacharyate. Since bodhasya atmasvarupatvat, bodha is the nature of the Atma, nature of bodha or consciousness. Nityam tatra upacharyate. That consciousness which is the nature of Atma, which is always there, which never suffers a cessation even in the deep sleep, upacharyate, is thought to obtain in buddhi. Because buddhi can be experienced. The way we think experience, the way we are accustomed to experience things, in that sense buddhi is experienced. Atma is certainly experienced, but not the way we are accustomed to understand what an experience is. It is the very nature of experiencer. And therefore, that experience of the Atma is not of the same class as experience of Buddhi, etc. So first thing that is experienced is Buddhi. And Buddhi is experienced as a conscious entity. Therefore it's taken to be Atma. So he says Buddhi takes itself to be Atma. That's how it is explained here. Tatra upacharyate. But it is only in a secondary sense, not really because bodhasya buddhim vina api sushupte sadbhavat. So vina api buddhim sushupte bodhasya sadbhavat. The Bodha, the consciousness is there in deep sleep stage, even when Buddhi is not there. Why is it that Atma Swarupat, Bodhasya? Bodha, the consciousness, is the essential nature of Atma, which can never be denied, never be negated, which can never not be there when deep sleep also. That consciousness, that Atma is very much there. Buddhim vinapi, whereas the Buddhi is not there. Therefore it is evident that to take that Buddhi to be consciousness is wrong, but upacharyate. One does not, in fact, inquire into this. Whether this, my conclusion or opinion that Buddhi is consciousness, that I am Buddhi, that is consciousness, this has never been subjected to scrutiny of vichara. And therefore, Buddhi is taken to be Atma, because Buddhi is experienced conscious. Adyasya vyavakriyate. Upon Buddhi there is the superimposition Atmatvam, the selfness, and therefore consciousness. And the limitation of Buddhi are superimposed upon the Atma. So mutual superimposition creates this notion that I am limited, that I am bound. Avivekopyanadhyayam. Aviveka also is beginningless. There is no reason. Why does it happen? Why should it happen? Because people get frustrated. Why does it happen? Anadi means we don't know. Anadi means that there is no adi, there is no reason, there is no explanation that we have put it this way. If somebody comes with a better explanation, we'll accept it. Avivekopyanadi, this aviveka also is anadi. Has no beginning, has no reason, it's just there. Devasya svabhavayam. Just the nature of the Deva to have, Atma to have this. So there is something, fundamentally there is something that cannot be explained, which has to be accepted. Anadi means there is no adi, which means there is no cause, which means there is there and we have to accept it. How do we expect? Because we experience bondage or we think I am bound, that notion, now we realize that it's a notion. Because Anvaya Vyatireka becomes very clear that Buddhi cannot be consciousness. Because in deep sleep stage there is no awareness at all, which is that awareness which is the nature of Buddhi, that awareness we don't have. Awareness, that is nature of Atma, is there in deep sleep. What we call awareness of things, which is awareness of Buddhi, that is not there in deep sleep state. So some people have concluded there is no awareness in the deep sleep state at all, but that awareness of Buddhi is not there. But that there is no awareness is because there is awareness, understand? There is no awareness in deep sleep is because awareness is there which illumines the absence of that awareness. So this is what we find to be there, and therefore there is no explanation for what is nature, what is causeless. Ignorance, there is no reason for, we can't give reason for ignorance. So we can't give reason for aviveka also. Ignorance means avaranam, we cannot give reason. So vikshepa, this mutual superimposition, we cannot give reason also. So why is there feeling of bondage? I don't know. It's there. So what is moksha? That feeling has to go. Recognize your true nature. You already liberated. For the recognition, live like a liberated person. Then you will realize that. Don't live like a bound person. Live like a liberated person. Fake it till you make it. So that is the method that Vedanta teaches, which is in keeping with the reality. Moksha tannasheva syat. Therefore, the nasa, dispelling off this aviveka, the notion which has no beginning, no reason, but then it has an end. Darkness has no beginning, but darkness ends when the light comes. So ajnanam, aviveka has no beginning, has an end when the viveka comes. Nanyata anupattitaha, there is no other way that it can be explained. Meaning that the explanation of bondage that people give that is not tenable at all. Why do you see a snake where there is a rope? I don't know. That's what Vedanta is inexplicable. Meaning that at the root there is inexplicability. Understand this. The problem is inexplicable. Vedanta, there is no problem. Basically, that is why it doesn't matter to us. In fact, it is a bhushanam, not a dushanam. It's an ornament, it's a glory that there is no explanation, because then it can be dispelled. If there was an explanation, that would be real then. Why is the ignorance there? If there is an explanation, then ignorance will not go. Ignorance, adhyasa means aviveka, notions, bondage, all of them have no reason to be there. Therefore, they will go when the truth is recognized. It is the absence of recognition of truth that these things all exist. When the truth is recognized, there is no reason for them to persist. Yesham vastvantarapati moksho nashastutairmatah. No, giving reality to moksha, bandha. But Vedanta explains that bondage is simply a notion, a Brahma. But those who think that bandha is real, they will say that the Atma who is bound becomes liberated. Atma undergoes a transformation, or Atma becomes Brahma. Vastvantarapa. Vastu means the reality. The reality that Atma changes and Atma becomes Brahma. So those who think that this is the nature of moksha, that one who is liberated becomes, one who is found becomes liberated, because bondage is taken to be real. If bondage is real, then how to explain liberation? Either the bound undergoes the change, becomes liberated, vastvantarapatti. Bound vastu is one, liberated vastu is another one, and thus vastvantar, that is essential change in essential nature. Atma is bound, so bond is essential nature of Atma. If bond is essential nature of Atma, when can it become free? When freedom becomes essential nature. So bound Atma becomes free Atma, that's called vastvantarapatti, a real change in vastu. If that is moksha, yahi for whom yesham, tahi nasastu matah. They do not realize that the bound one has to die to become liberated, because bondage and liberation cannot coexist. Darkness has to go for the light to come. If darkness is real nature, then darkness dies when the light comes. Then who experiences that light? Who becomes lighted? Who becomes liberated? Nasastu dehi matah. It amounts to saying that the Atma becomes, is gone, dispelled, suffers extinction. The bound Atma suffers extinction for the liberated Atma to be. Then who experiences liberation? Then continuing with the next verse, verse 63. Avasthantaramapyevam avikarānna yujyate vikāre vayavitvam syāt tato nāsho ghatādivat. Avasthantaram says, no, it is not that the bound Atma becomes liberated Atma. Bondage is an avastha of the Atma, state of Atma, and liberation is state of the same Atma. Not that one Atma, bound Atma, becomes a liberated Atma, but Atma of whom the bondage is a state right now, avastha. So bandha is avastha, moksha is another avastha. So avasthantaram api evam. Other explanation, when you give reality to bondage, then one of the explanations has to come. The Atma, because we say there is no persistency of Atma, then who experiences the liberation when that bound Atma is not there? No, he is there. He was bound and now he himself has become liberated. So one who was bound now experiences I am liberated. So yatha, the Tika I should have read that, yatha vastvantarapatti moksha iti pakshanupatti. Just as Atma becomes, bound Atma becomes liberated, is anupatti, is untenable because then there is nobody to experience liberation. Anityatvapatisya, anityatvam because one Atma is gone. Then a vinasha happens, so vinasha, nityatvam is not there. So number one, that moksha cannot be there, and nityatvam cannot be there. Tada atmana avasthantarapatti apatti moksha pakshevi. Similarly also paksha, the view in which moksha is avasthantara. That Atma, the bondage is one avastha of the Atma, liberation is another avastha, that's the moksha. Which means that now Atma persists to experience moksha. Sadosha tulya, the dosha, anityatva dosha still remains. So the verse says, avasthantaram api evam avikarānna yujyate. Now, you want Atma to be Nitya, for sure. Everybody wants Atma to be Nitya. Nitya means eternal. They want moksha also to be Nitya. So, Nityatvam and Vikaritvam cannot coexist. One entity Atma cannot Nitya, Avinashi, deathless, eternal. And also vikari and changing cannot be, has to be avikari. Therefore, they accept Atma as avikari. Avikarat. Atma avikarat. Because you say Atma is nitya, so in effect you are saying that Atma is avikari. Sometimes you don't realize what you are saying, and therefore that flow comes up with what do you call it in the check, right? So they want Atma to be Nitya, all right. And then they want Atma to be liberated, but recognize that you are accepting Vikara in Atma. But you say Atma is Nitya, therefore Atma is Avikari. So this Vikara, the change of state is called Vikara. The substance doesn't die. What was milk becomes curd. So same substance, same entity remains. Vikara means change of state. And so, but then, avasthantaram, that means that milk and that means this vikara means that change, means it will continue, that vikara will continue. The curd will become something else, that will become something else until it will perish. So, avikaritva, atmana. So, atma is accepted, avikari, changeless, therefore avasthantaratvam, therefore There cannot be change of state. There cannot be state. Atma cannot have state. If state is there, then state will change. Avasthandra na yujyate. For that which is changeless, there cannot be a state, change of state, because that requires vikara or change. Avasthantaram. Anya avastha, another avastha is called avasthantaram. So bondage is one avastha, liberation another avastha. That real change makes an entity perishable. Because if to change the nature of something, it will keep on changing. If there is no reason for change, then things will keep on changing. So when the fruits are packed, they always are perishable. Because things will perish, flammable, inflammable, because that is nature. Perishable, to perish. So without your doing anything, it will perish. Because that's the nature which keep on, manifesting or asserting itself. Yadi punah vikarapi abhyagamya, all right, Atma is vikari, he says. To justify that moksha is the avasthantara, meaning is another state of Atma. Then Atma, you would accept that Atma undergoes vikara or change. So he says, yadi punah vikarapi abhyagamyeta. So that's all right, Atma is vikari. What about that? Tatha sati savayatvam atmanasyat. Where vikara is there, it must be a composite entity. An entity composed of many parts or components alone can undergo change. Because what is change? Those constituents undergo rearrangement, The constituents undergo rearrangement is a new state. Like a snake, coil is an avastha, straight and coil. Its constituent undergo change, and that's another avastha. Basic entity remains the same. And so, all right, Atma is vikari. But then if it is vikari, then it must have constituents. It must have sanghata. It must have an aggregate of various components or ingredients. Savayatvam, that means that it possessed of many avayavas, many parts, many constituents. Then, if that is so again, tatah savayatvat nasheva. Then again, when it is made up of very constituents, whatever keeps that constituents, in one configuration, that will change, then configuration bound to change. Because everything wants to attain its natural state, doesn't want to be stuck to anything. If given the freedom, it will want to be independent. So when these things are stuck to each other, they get stuck, all right. But they're stuck because they are made to stick. And whenever that bonding force becomes weak, then this will disintegrate into its component. Therefore, savayatvam atmana syat, tata savayatvat nasha eva syat. So this will disintegrate someday. Ghatadivat, because we have seen Ghata and others, by themselves don't do anything to Ghata. In course of time, it will disintegrate. That bondage of, moisture which bounds various, particles of clay, when that moisture becomes evaporated in course of time, they will disintegrate. So that's another problem. Vikare avayavitvam syat, tato nasho ghatadivata. Therefore Atma becomes perishable, anitya. And you want Atma nitya also? Ataha, that means that there cannot be real bondage and there cannot be real liberation. The only any plausible explanation is bondage is the notion and liberation is the removal of the notion. Ataha bhranti nivritti matra moksha. The nivritti, dispelling of the bhranti, removal of the bhranti of the notion is moksha, is liberation. No, nyatha, no, in no other way the bondage and liberation can be explained. If you want Atma to be Nitya, then there is no, you don't even care for bondage and liberation because every moment it changes. It is not that now it is, a Nitya thing keeps on changing every moment. So Atma that is bound is not around for, experiencing what comes next. That's all. Essentially that is why the Kshanika Bhada, momentariness will come. Even if you accept continuity, it is difficult to explain continuity in that which is changing. Whatever Vada comes. But then, you cannot say Atma is Nitya and bound. Atma is Nitya and liberated. Bondage and liberation cannot be associated with Atma, who is Nitya, who is consciousness. The only thing that is plausible is that bondage is a notion and liberation is the removal of that notion. So the Vedantin's position is completely now established here. Then teacher will talk about Vedanta. Now we are on the familiar ground, you see. So going to the next verse, says the teacher, verse 64, Tasmad bhranti rato nyahi bandha mokshadi kalpanaha sankhya kanada bauddhanam मीमांसा हत कल्पना ततः अतः अन्य बंध मोक्षादि कल्पना अन्य भ्रांति ही. Therefore, any kalpana, bandha and moksha, other than what we said, that bandha also is a notion, moksha also no. Other than that, any other kalpana giving some reality of bandha and moksha itself is bhranti. Bhranti syat. Vedanta siddhanta anyaha bandhadi moksha kalpanaha. They are all plural. Because so many kalpanas are there. Everybody has their own kalpana of what is bandha and what is moksha. Anya other than Vedanta siddhanta. Siddhanta. After all the considerations, this is the conclusion we have come to. The considered conclusion of Vedanta. So, they think that bandha also is a notion, moksha also is a notion. Other than that, Vadavyutprekshitaha, all the disputants, they project or come up with this kind of kalpana, what is bandha and what is moksha. Bhranti, all of this also are kalpana, they are bhranti. Who sankhya kanada bauddhanam bandha mokshadi kalpanaha. So we examine sankhya, kanada. So in sankhya, vaisheshika is kanada, bauddha, all different opinions of bauddha also are analyzed. And anybody else like the Charvaka, etc., in Jaina. Bandha moksha, the kalpanaha bhranti. The kalpana, the imaginations they have of bandha and moksha, themselves are bhranti. Why is it so? Mimamsahat kalpanaha. They are kalpanaha. Mimamsahat. Mimamsa means inquiry. Reasoning. Mimamsa is a method of arriving at the meaning of something. Basically, meaning of the Veda Vakyas. And so, Mimamsa then would mean reasoning here. Therefore, Hata means deprived of, bereft of any reasoning. So, those kalpanas on the part of the Sankhya, Kanada, Buddha, the kalpana of the bandha moksha are deprived of any reasoning. Therefore, Shruti Smriti Nyaya Badhitatvat Mimamsa Hata Kalpanaha means Shruti Smriti Nyaya Badhitvat, because they are contradicted by Shruti, Smriti and Nyaya. What the Vedas say, what the Smriti says, what the reasoning says. Na adarniyaha mokshavi. Therefore, mumukshu should not give any reality, or mumukshu should not respect these things. Not give them reality, not respect them, not give them any consideration, just let them go from your mind. Iti upasamharati. So the verse 64 explained by the Tika, Tasmad Bhranti Atah Anyaha Hi Kalpanaha Bhranti Eva Parisheshad Atmani Bandhamoksha Pratibhasa Iti Kalpana Shrutyadi Aviruddha. So Tasmad Bhranti, so that is the conclusion of Vedanta. Parisheshad, because we analyze different possible explanations of bandha and moksha, and none of them is tenable. Therefore, we arrive at the conclusion by law of elimination that this bandha moksha are bhranti. Bandha moksha pratibhasa atmani. Bhranti means that the bondage appears to be in Atma, not in Atma. Similarly, moksha also of the same reality. Iti kalpana shrutyadi aviruddha. Therefore, that kalpana that Vedantin has is aviruddha, unopposed to Shruti, Smriti, Nyaya. Ataha anyaha bandhamokshadi kalpanaha. Any kalpanas other than this, meaning giving some reality to bandha and moksha. Adi shabdat tad hetu kalpanascha. So when they explain what bondage liberation is, they give reason also. Hetu. So if this kalpana or bandha, moksha is what they arrive is bhranti, then the reason which they present also is bhranti. Na adartavyaha, therefore, kadachana, therefore, never we should ever respect them or give them any reality. That's what other or atah asmat siddhanta. So atah tasmad bhranti atah anyaha. That atah, or you can look at the anvaya in a slightly different way. Atah means the fifth case, asmat siddhantat atah anyaha. Other than this siddhanta, atah asmat siddhantat anyaha. Bandha mokshadi kalpanaha. He asmat bhrantihi. There is a he there, bhrantihi. Since all because of this, all of the kalpanas are bhranti. Tasmat. Then tasmat, pramanas tasmat na adartavyaha. So that's how to connect with the next verse, na adartavya. Tasmat na adar. He means yasmat. Yasmat, all the kalpanas other than what we explained are bhranti. Therefore, they should not be taken into consideration. Bhranti means what? Pramana shunya. That's called bhranti, where there is no pramanam, there is no valid means of knowledge to establish that. Snake cannot be established by any valid means of knowledge. The moment you show the light, is not there. Kesham va kalpanaha nadartavya, kalpana adartavya iti. Sankhya Buddha Kanadinam, Kanad Buddhadinam. So Mimamsa Hataha, Vichara Vruddhaha. Mimamsa is Vichara, inquiry, which follows certain reasoning. Therefore, they are quite devoid of any reasoning. Vichara asahaha. In fact, they cannot stand reasoning. That is called kalpana. that when you subject to reasoning, it just disappears. And so, Swami used to say, Vicharam na sahate maya. Maya cannot ever tolerate vichara. It appears real as long as you don't inquire into what it is. When you start inquiring, it disappears. Like an imposter who posted, he appeared or posed as a representative of the bride, groom, and groom also. So bride side and groom side, and then when they start inquiring who this fellow is, he disappeared. Vicharam sahate maya. Mimamsa kalpana ityartha. Therefore, all these kalpanas are devoid of mimamsa or vichara or reasoning. Anadara hetumaha. Why should we disregard them? So next verse says, Shastrati. Shastra yukti vihinatva. Nadartavyah kadachana. Shakyante shatasho bhaktum. Doshastasam sahasrashah. So, Mimamsa hatha kalpana or Shastra yukti vihinatvat. Those kalpana, those positions that Sankhya, Skanada, Bauddha and everybody has no support of Shastra, number one, and Yukti vihinatvat. Suppose they say we don't accept your Shastra, but you have to accept the Buddhi, Yukti. That is why all these conclusions of the Bauddhas, Jainas, Sankhyas, and Vaisheshikas, and of course the materialists, Charvakas, they all were subjected to reasoning. Each one dismissed the other anyway. That's what Mandvikarika says, that we just have to watch. Each one comes up and dismisses the other one, and then we have to fight on the Prasava Malla, last Malla we have to fight with. That is the Shunyavadi. That also was shown how that also doesn't have any support of reasoning. The Shastra yukti vihinatvat na adartavyaha kadachana. Because how can you respect them, take them into consideration, when there is neither support of Shastra nor support of Buddhi, Yukti? Not only that, Shakyante shatasho vaktum dosha tasam sahasrasha tasam kalpananam sahasrasha shatasha sahasrasha dosha vaktum shakyante. For each kalpana, in fact, we can come up with hundreds and thousands of logical defects, inconsistencies. We can come up with the logical inconsistencies, hundreds and thousands for each one of them. This is the way to, humiliate them, dismiss them. Kachro karo in Gujarati, so dismiss them. Itasya sankhya kalpana na adartavyayate. Further, is another reason why this projections of sankhya and others should not be respected, regarded, taken into account. The next verse is Apinindo upapattescha Yanyato jnani chetyatah Tyaktvato yanya shastroktihi Matim kuryad drudham buddha. Api nindopavattescha. Nindaya upattescha, because they have been condemned in the Shastra or in the Shruti and Smriti. In what words? Yannato jnani chaityatah. So Tikakara quotes Yanyato jnani shastrani prithivyan vividhani vai shankaniyani vidmadbhi dharma suddhim abhipsubhi. anyatah anyani shastrani. There are all kinds of shastras are there. So Buddha, there were shastras, Jaina, all these are shastras. This, how do you say that our kalpana is contradicting shastra? Look at our shastra. True, there are many. So prasivyam vividani shastrani santi. There are many kinds of shastras, the scriptures on this earth. Ata anyani, other than the Veda Shastra bhinnani, Ataha Veda Shastrat bhinnani anyani. Ata anyani Veda Shastrat bhinnani. So there are shastras that are different from the Veda Shastra on this earth. Vidvadvi Shankaniya, that Vidwan should always, take them with a pinch of salt. Don't take them on their face value. Shankaniya. Dharma Suddhim Avipsubhihi. So those Vidwan or those scholars or the thinking people who are desirous of Dharma Suddhim, those who want the purity of Dharma. And Dharma can be pure when the Siddhanta is pure. When the basic understanding of Siddhanta, the principle is right, then the Dharma, the value, the way of life derived from also will be right. So those who want to live life correctly, which means that those who would also require that the injunctions of Dharma also are based on the reality and not imagination. Because life is very precious. When you are a sincere person, all right. And therefore you respect or trust the words of who appear to be learned people and what appears to be learned as scriptures. You say, other than the Vedas, don't respect them because they are all figment of imagination. And the reasoning of a given person, not coming from Ishvara. And anybody's in buddhi, human buddhi, however great it is going to be limited by so many defects. So avaram is there, vikshapa is there, samshaya is there, viparya is there. Limitation of these instruments, the karana, apatavam. So all these defects are there in the intellect of the human being, however great that human being is. So don't accept them. Because you'll find that ultimately there is inconsistency someplace. Shankaniyani. Therefore, don't take them as on their face value. You better inquire into that. Shanka means then you say, wait a minute, let me see whether it makes sense or not. So this shows that, Nindo Avattescha, in this manner, all the Shastras, other than the Vedas, have been condemned. Then, Ya Veda Bhashya Smrutaya, Yasya Kasya Kudrushtaya, Sarvastha Nishphala Pretya, Tamo Nishthaita Smrutihi. That is Manusmriti. That's the statement of Manusmriti. 1295. Yad Veda Bhashya Smrutaya. So then this one talks about Smriti. Earlier one talked about Shastra. Everybody is, and then everybody has Smritis also, law books. And we also have Smritis. So, Veda Bhashya Smrutaya. All the Smritis are which are based not on Veda. So, Smriti is accepted as Pramanam if it is based on the Shruti of the Veda. But there are many Smritis of which we cannot trace the origin into Veda. Not only that, but some Smritis contradicting what the Veda says. So Veda Bhashya Smrutaya Yasya Kasya Kudrushtaya. And very distorted perceptions are there, many. Because people have composed many texts because of their anger, because of its resentment for, So people have resentment for what's going on. For the authority there is resentment. For injunctions, resentment. So they revolt and they write their own things. Kudrushtaya. The only purpose is to the distorted perception is given to dismiss or condemn the accepted thing. If you do not say that, you have to take also the accepted thing for this, for granted. You subject them also to scrutiny of inquiry. But just because they are authority, you can't dismiss them. Some people have problem with authority. But Swami would say that he must have problem with his father. When growing up, father is an authoritarian person. And this fellow is grown with all resentment for authority, for father. And therefore in life also, whatever is authoritarian, he cannot stand that. The moment somebody tells him to do something, he cannot do that because his mind will revolt against authority. So he'll come up with his own thing, kudrashtaya, sarvastaha, nishfalaha. Understand that they are all meaningless. Nishfalaha means they do not give any phalam, no benefit. They are devoid of all benefits. Pretya tamo nishtaha, because they are all based on tamas or wrong thinking. And pretya, so after death they will not help you at all because you will live a wrong life. Tamo nishtayataha smutaha, because they are said to be based on tamas or ignorance, and therefore they are all Vedabhashya, they should not be respected. So Shastra, which is Vedabhashya, should not be respected. The Smriti is Vedabhashya, even our own Smriti should not be respected. Api Nindo Vattesh. So all these people who have come up with their own ideas of what is bondage, what is moksha, what is Atma, all of these are kalpanas not based on Shruti and Smriti or Yukti. And therefore, they should not be respected. Ityadi nindavachana nadata vityartha atha anya shastrokti tyaktva davat tyaktvato anya shastrokti matim kuryad dhrudham buddha atha anya shastrokti tyaktva dhrudham matim buddha kuryad. Therefore, giving up the mati or belief in any shastra, don't get influenced by all these views. Otherwise, you will never be settled, your mind will not be settled. So, dhrudham, what is important for an aspirant to progress in his life is a firm conviction of what is the end and what is the means. The end must be clear and means must be clear. Moksha is the end. What's the nature of moksha? That should be clear. Then the means will become clear. If moksha is real, means are also real. If moksha is a notion, then means is only ignorance and knowledge. Because Bhranti is only product of ignorance. If Bhranti is all that we are suffering from in life, then knowledge alone is a solution. No other solution. So this conviction should be there, firm conviction should be there in the aspirants. Katham madim kuryat? Kutra va iti? How do we have that firm conviction? And where should we have that firm conviction? The akankszayam, no, when the teacher says that kuryat buddha dhrudham matim kuryat, Buddha, a thinking person, a viveki, should have firm conviction. Where and how? So next verse answers that. Shraddha bhakti puraskritya hitva sarvam anarjavam vedantasyaiva tattvarthe vyasasya bhimate tatha. Shraddha bhakti puraskritya. Shraddha shrutyarthe arthe vishwasa. Vishwasa Shraddha, but not any vishwasa. Shrutyarthe yukte. So Shrut yukte arthe. A specific kind of vishwasa or trust is called Shraddha. Shastrasya Guru Vakyasya. An implicit trust in the scriptures and the words of a teacher is called Shraddha here in Vedanta. Not any Vishwasa is called Shraddha. Particular kind of Vishwasa, trust, where Shraddha Shrutyukte Arthe. In the Artha, in the top subject matter of Shruti, what the Shruti teaches, the Shraddha, the implicit faith in the teaching of Shruti, the word of Shruti is called Shraddha. And that's not enough. Bhakti, Tatparata, then being devoted to what the Shruti says. Now, one implicit faith in what the Shruti says, and devotion to that Shruti means that we have to make it, a reality in our life. Tatparata. Shraddhavan labhate jnanam tatparaha sanyatendriya. So Lord Krishna says one way Shraddha and Tatparata. Being committed to that. Being devoted, that's called Bhakti. So Bhakti Tatparata. Tatparata means what? Shrutyakte arthe parata tatparata. Whatever Shruti teaches, the devotion, commitment to what the Shruti teaches is the Bhakti. Meaning that an eagerness to implement that in my life. And implement to make it a reality in my life. What I learned from Shruti, that it should become a reality in my life to implement that. That is because now I want to test what it says, I want to experience. I have trust in what it says, but it should become the object of my experience, and therefore let me follow what they say. The devoted to following, that's a bhakti. Shraddha bhakti puraskritya, te puraskritya, keeping that in your view. Means adarena avalambya, etc. Adarena avalambya. Avalambya, resorting to that, adarana with respect, with commitment, with bhakti. Therefore, Shraddha and Bhakti is what we are implementing in our life with a commitment, with respect, with enthusiasm, with trust. Hitva sarvam anarjavam. One qualification is stated here. Hitva sarvam anarjavam. Because don't cheat yourself, be honest. So honesty is a big value here. Be honest to yourself. Don't cheat yourself. So, meaning that sometimes people want to believe that I am all right. That honesty with one's own self is not that easy. There is a need to believe that I am such and such. For self-acceptance, there is a need that I should be such and such. So I tend to believe that I am already that such and such. Then what I did was right. What I did was this. So, but then be honest with yourself. It was wrong, accept that it was wrong. You didn't know, you accept that you did not know. Then the ways are open for you to consult, to correct yourself. If a mistake is accepted as a mistake, then you correct it. If you realize that you don't know something, then you can always check with somebody, consult somebody. So honesty opens the way for change and improvement. So hitva saram anarjavam, give all dishonesty, crookedness about oneself, cheating oneself, cheating others, but before that one cheats oneself. So arjavam is a value. Amayatvam, adambitvam, ahimsa, kshanti, arjavam. So that presupposes all other values also. Arjavam, straightforwardness. Alignment between the thought and word and deed is called arjavam, straightforwardness. Rectitude. And so, giving up, be straightforward, be honest. You have any tendency to cheat others and cheat yourself. Crookedness, give up crookedness. Be honest. Vedantasya tattvarthe vyasasya vimate tatha. So, where should we? So, Vedantasya tattvarthe vyasasya abhimate tatha. So, Vedantasya tattvarthe Shraddha Bhakti Puraskritya. So, what is it that tattva that the Vedanta is teaching? No, what does Vedanta teach? Vyasasya abhimate. The way Vyasa is teaching in Brahma Sutra. So teaching of Vyasa of the Vedanta also again. Vedanta also in various interpretations. But what Vyasa teaches, that is the teacher. Vyasa or Badarayana, Bhagavan Badarayana. Sutra Bhashya Krito Vande. So Sutrakara and Bhashyakara, they become a Pramana. So except they follow that teaching. Even Sutrakara's teaching also is interpreted by Bhashyakara, because that's interpreted in many ways. So resorting that, having firm faith in that, then your clear understanding of what Vedanta teaches is by a clear understanding of Brahma Sutra. There is a clear understanding of what Brahma Sutra Bhashya, which again you learn from your own teacher. So having firm faith in that, a firm commitment to that. And if you are a seeker, then you will not just stay or will not be satisfied with your belief. You will want to make it, live life accordingly. Make it a reality in your life. And then only it can become reality someday. So the teacher says that the purpose of all the discussion is to create a clarity about what Vedanta teaches. So what we are teaching is what is the teaching of Veda Vyasa. What is being taught here is the teaching of Veda Vyasa. Understand this, we are given all the reasoning for that, all the support of Shruti, Smriti and Yukti, everything is given. And therefore understand this clearly, develop firm conviction and then put it into practice. Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeri Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.